What the hell? Don't know what happened there. Okay. Should be fixed now. Sorry about that. Well, crap. I just said good morning to everybody. I'll try that again. Good morning, everybody. I see Dave and Dan, Fishing, Golf, and Guns, and Unverified Bear is with us. Good morning. So it's just me again. Cameron's got work this morning. But hopefully he'll have time to call in with us in sometime in the next 25 minutes or so. It's Monday morning. It's the beginning of Christmas week, as in everybody's gonna be taking a lot of time off. I'm still working this week, but I've got a lighter schedule than usual. We'll see how that shakes out for what it means for trying to do a little bit with the show. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I had a dinner with the family yesterday, and we did the little gift exchange where I walked away with a bottle of rum that is just Bumbu, I think it's called. It's very, very forward on the caramel notes. The wife and I had a glass each last night. It was excellent bottle of rum. So, and I think that was actually Dad's contribution to the gift pool. We did one of those games where you draw numbers and take turns stealing presents from each other. It's big fun. Ma says we didn't get the family photo. Everybody started leaving and we hadn't done that yet, so we'll see if we can't do something about that in the not too distant, Ma. But this morning, there is a lot that I would like to talk about. But I think I'm gonna focus on this. So I have this article here from the Huffington Post, which is a just dirty liberal rag, and that's why I want to look at this one in particular. So Carrie Lake had an event this weekend, and she said some things that people are talking about. And just read this headline: Trump-backed election loser Carrie Lake hints at violence at conservative gathering. Hints at violence. Hints at violence. This is coming from the people that burned your country for a year in the middle of a pandemic, shut down your schools and businesses, created record inflation that hasn't been seen in most living memory, have absolutely destroyed what was a record high thriving economy. We went from one of the historically best economies ever in the United States to immediately absolutely destroyed. And it was all done so overtly that you cannot pretend, a reasonable person cannot come to the conclusion that we went from record high economy to record low economy overnight as the predictable result of proposed and executed legislative and policy maneuvers by the former vice president and his Confederates. One cannot reasonably conclude that these are the results of incompetence. You know, Hamlin's razor, we've talked about it before. Hamlin's razor says, never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. And yeah, fair play, but and Danny mentions the Clower and Piven plan. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but the idea that consistently repeated incompetence can be merely incompetence. Let me clue you into something. People voted for it. Now, no matter what you believe about the veracity or reliability of the 2020 election, the fact of the matter is, it is not the case that no one voted for Joe Biden. right? So let's pretend, for the sake of argument, that the 2020 election was completely illegitimate, absolutely stolen. For the sake of argument, it still remains the fact that even if enough votes were changed to make a difference, that doesn't change the fact that there were legitimate votes in that election. Right? And for the sake of this conversation, I am not making allegations about what happened in 2020. I'm making the point that no matter what you think about 2020, the fact is that people legitimately voted for Joe Biden. People honestly took the position that Donald Trump's their aversion to Donald Trump's personality was more important than your liberty and prosperity. So no matter how much faith one may or may not have remaining in the electoral process in this country, let's go back the other direction and assume that the election was totally legitimate. There was no foul play. Everything went off the way it was supposed to. And let's assume that that was true of everything that happened in the midterms. There was no foul play at all. The fact remains that there are voters, there are people in this country who are allowed to vote, who vote purely on emotional reaction, have no clue what they're voting for, which could not be more strongly evidenced by any fact other than the mere fact that there were 3 Democrats elected in this last election who died before the election, who died before the first vote was cast in early voting. And they were still elected. Now, whether or not they were elected legitimately is irrelevant. The fact is that people voted for them. If you voted for a candidate who died, you do not deserve to vote because you are not adequately informed. This idea that everyone has a right to vote, that is not enshrined in the Constitution. It is not meant, the idea of a right to vote is not mentioned until it is expressly discussed in the 14th Amendment that the vote should not be restricted by race. I may have that wrong. That may be the 13th, but I'm pretty sure it's the 14th Amendment. But the point is that not within the original construction or in the original Bill of Rights is there a guarantee of a right to vote. Voting is not a right. It is a privilege. And more importantly, it is a responsibility. It is a responsibility that needs to be taken very seriously, and it is not. These same Democrats who elected 3 dead people have proposed aggressively drafted legislation on more than one occasion through the last several years, basically since before the election of Barack Obama, have pushed for things like lowering the voting age to 16, extending the privilege of the vote to not just non-citizens, but even explicitly to illegal aliens. Right? They have gone so far as to suggest. Stacey Abrams was very clear in her speeches before her first failed gubernatorial bid that the election needed to include the votes of hostile foreign invaders, what they like to call undocumented workers, what are more commonly colloquially referred to as illegal immigrants, but there's no such thing as an illegal immigrant, right? You'll hear the Democrats make this argument all the time. No person is illegal. A person can't be illegal. And Fair play. That is true. A person cannot be illegal. And that is true because law prescribes, or more correctly, defines prohibited actions. A person cannot be illegal. An action is illegal. An illegal action taken by a person changes the identity definition of that person. They go from being a citizen to being a criminal. And that is even true of people who are non-citizens of the United States. If you're a citizen of Mexico, for example, and you illegally cross the border into the United States of America, you are no longer a lawful citizen of anywhere. You are now a criminal. And in the case of those coming up from Mexico, you're a criminal who has a very specific and important definition, because what you've done is you've committed a war crime. You've committed an act of hostility against a foreign nation with the explicit support of your hostile host nation. So I don't ever want to hear any of you say illegal immigrant. There's no such thing. Immigration is a process of law, right? When you commit murder, you're not an illegal murderer, right? You're just a murderer. You've committed a crime. You have broken the process of law. When you take a legal process, right? When we talk about embezzlers, we don't refer to them as illegal money changers. No, a money changer is a legal process, right? We don't refer to them as illegal investors. Investing is a legal process. They're embezzlers. It's a crime. Their definition is different. Somebody breaks across a border, they've committed the crime of invasion, which is a much more serious crime than even murder. Because what you've done is you have attempted murder against an entire people. And almost never without the result of actual murder occurring in tandem. So, remember that among all the allegations that there have been about suspect voter situations, etc., the fact is that these Democrats, including the 3 dead ones, but more importantly, the very dangerous live ones, actually have people who vote for them. So let's get back to this, and I want you to remember what I said about these people being dangerous. The article says, Phoenix, Arizona, former television newscaster and failed Republican candidate for governor Kari Lake hinted at violence to a crowd of thousands of conservative activists on Sunday, continuing her claim that she had really won last month. So I'm gonna skip over some of where she's making a claim, and I want to get to where they're pulling the violence from, the idea that there was violence. Bear with me. They appear to have buried it further down the article than I last thought. Where is it? Okay, here it is. Lake, who has sued elections administrations alleging fraud, called the Maricopa County election system a house of cards that she promised to take down. I'm not just going to knock that house of cards over, we're going to burn it to the ground, she said. They messed with the wrong woman, they messed with the wrong movement of we the people, and we're not going to take it anymore. Guys, Jamie Young says illegal migration is not invasion. Invasion is an armed attack. I see. You're stupid. You just don't know what you're talking about. I assume that you believe that no immigrants, no criminal aliens, no hostile foreign invaders ever cross into this country carrying weapons. I would refer you, of course, to the Fast and Furious scandal. Or am I to assume that you suppose that none of the criminal aliens, none of the hostile foreign invaders that enter this country illegally are members of MS-13, are affiliated with foreign caliphates, hostile terrorist groups, that none of those criminal aliens have ulterior motives or are hiding the invasion and the force majeure of their various paramilitary organizations in the guise of migrant work seekers. Yeah, Jamie, you're just dumb. You clearly don't have an intelligent or legitimate background in national security or intelligence, and that's okay. But I weep that you can vote. Try again, sweetheart. Unverified Bear says, invasion requires no kinetic attack. Yeah, that is also true. A lot of people like Tucker Carlson got a lot of guff for talking about things like this, like the white replacement theory. Oh, you're just a crazy right winger with stupid conspiracy theory. And then here we have Chuck Schumer comes out and just says, no, that's exactly what we're doing. Jamie says, for disrespecting me, okay, bye. Yeah, bye. So, we'll get back to the article now. So this sentence, apparently what she said was, I'm not just going to knock that house of cards over, we're going to burn it to the ground. And the takeaway by these lefties is hints at violence at conservative gathering. How? You don't believe this. The person who wrote this article does not believe that her metaphoric reference to burning down the house of cards that is the election administrators, they don't believe that's an allegation of violence or a hint of violence or a call to violence. They're intentionally extrapolating and misrepresenting the claim that is made, the statement that is made, and they know it. And how do we know it? We know it because we're talking about the same people that defended the Antifa protests, and more specifically, defended the actions of elected Democrats who, during the Summer of Love, while the country was being set ablaze by armed, masked terrorists, that would be BLM and Antifa. So the same people that defended the Democrats who raised money to fund these armed terrorists and to bail them out of jail, and read headlines with phrases like mostly peaceful protests, fiery but mostly peaceful, right? These are the same left-wing propagandists that are about to run another very public hearing on the January 6th incident and refuse to even mention the May 29th insurrection, when armed left-wing extremists attacked the White House, tore down barriers, attempted to assassinate a sitting president, and burned down the church across the street. They pretend like that never occurred. But it absolutely did. Donald Trump had to be evacuated to the emergency safety bunker precisely because these terrorists made an attempt on his life, and they set a church on fire in the process. And when I say terrorists, I'll take you back to last week. Here's a headline from Breitbart about an incident last week. And I went to Breitbart because I just hate the AJC. The AJC would be the closest major outlet to the incident, but I don't like them. Suspects from Antifa Autonomous Zone charged with domestic terrorism. That's right, kids. Right here in our own backyard in Georgia, officials charged 5 suspects connected to a far-left occupation in Atlanta, Georgia, with domestic terrorism and additional charges on Tuesday. On December 13th, the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, launched a raid on the so-called autonomous zone at the site of the future Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, the Post-Millennial reported Thursday. Members of Antifa and additional left-wing extremists from across the nation have gathered at the site to halt construction of what they have deemed Cop City, the article said. According to journalist Andy No, police found explosives at the site and, leading up to the raid, militants tried to burn a man to death in his car. In an update, No reported the suspects were denied bail during their bond hearing. No also shared a photo showing members of the group suspended from trees and standing on top of an overturned truck with a sign above them reading, "No forest, no peace, truck the police." Before the raid on Tuesday leading to the finding of explosives, the members of the autonomous zone had been terrorizing the community. A man who drove into the area thinking there was free junk was nearly killed when they set his car on fire with him in it. In a press release Wednesday, the GBI said the 5 people were arrested and charged after an operation at the training center's future location. Okay. To be clear, it is it is, in fact, this terrorist group that uses the language autonomous zone. I applaud the GBI for doing something. But here's the thing. There are more people involved in this autonomous zone deal than just these 5. So let's be very clear about what an autonomous zone is. I've worked on an autonomous zone in hostile territory. We call it a forward operating base or a command outpost. Right? In the middle of the desert in Afghanistan, where we put up HESCO barrier walls, we stage armed fighters and prepare to conduct combat kinetic activity against the host nation, who is our hostile foreign enemy. That is the conduct of war. If, within a nation, you establish a border, a boundary, use violence to enforce the legitimacy of that boundary, and declare the space within that boundary to be autonomous, distinct, separate, and free from the legal jurisdiction of the sovereign nation thereby surrounded, what you are engaged in is the conduct of war. And if you are citizens of that host nation, prior to the establishment of that autonomous zone, then it's a very specific kind of war. Unverified Bear says sedition, but he misses the mark. That, by definition, is insurrection. That is a guerrilla insurrection. Bowen asks, what are HESCOs filled with? Sand. Mostly sand. Sometimes blood. But mostly sand. So what should be happening here is not that the GBI or the FBI makes a handful of arrests, right? You don't need charges here. This isn't the conduct of crime. The establishment of an autonomous zone, this is not criminal activity. This is the conduct of war. The correct answer here is to deploy the Georgia National Guard and meet them in war. If you wish to conduct a war, you know what? Honestly, I say it is your right to do so. If you want to conduct a war, go for it. But just like being a police officer, being a soldier, or being a criminal, being an insurrectionist comes with risk. And that risk is that you lose and die. It is the sovereign responsibility of the nation suffering the insurrection to put it down. Right? Even if I agreed entirely with what these people are doing, even if I was completely on their side politically, the legitimate fact of the matter is that I could hope and wish for the downfall of the government that is suffering the insurrection. But that doesn't change the fact that the legal responsibility of that government is its establishment. And from that establishment, it has the sovereign duty to retain its authority and position. Even if the entire body of the people disagrees with the government and seeks to rise up and overthrow it, and we wish them luck in doing so, the fact is that the entity which is the government itself retains the responsibility to its own self-preservation. And that's one of the things that's most troubling about all this Antifa, woke, gender ideology garbage, is that we have a sovereign nation that is complicit, compliant, and capitulating to all of that garbage. They don't want to win. They don't want to uphold their explicit obligation to defend the safety, the freedom, and the rule of law that we Americans enjoy. They are scared. No, that's not correct. They're not scared. The government's not afraid to conduct the war against these people. The government is, they're not interested in conducting that war. They're not interested in doing what they want to do. The slender Hispanic chick that does the Blaze TV shows with Glenn Beck, I think her name's Savannah something, went on Tim Pool the other day, and they were talking about the drag shows in Texas, and one in particular, which is apparently associated with Disney, where they've got, they say that it's a family-friendly drag show and, fun for all ages, bring the kids, and then they're on stage with exposed breasts and performing acts of simulated sodomy in front of an audience full of children, and then inviting the children to come up on the stage. And Tim and them were talking about it, and like I said, I think her name's Savannah. I'd have to double check that, but she points out, guys. Oh, Danny says Sarah Gonzalez. That's right, Sarah Gonzalez. Anyway, so Sarah, not Savannah. My bad. But they point out, we don't need laws to protect children from that kind of obscene material. We already have them, right? Try to take your 7-year-old son to a skin bar because they have a great buffet, right? Go to what is it, the Pink Pony with your 7-year-old boy and see if they'll let him in. They won't, obviously, because it's illegal. They're not even going to check his ID at the door. They're going to look at him and say, that's a child, and he can't come in here. Okay, so if it's illegal to take your child to a strip club, and please believe I am by no means trying to make an argument that it should not be illegal. Children do not belong in clubs with naked adults, and most especially not naked adults performing overt sex acts on stage on display. It's illegal. It's illegal in every state in this nation, but it's happening. It's happening it's happening in Texas, but it's in Houston. And the only conclusion you can arrive at there, and it's the same problem with these autonomous zones, is that the police are not ambivalent. They're compliant. They want this stuff to happen. They want these laws to go away. They want your children exposed to pornography and obscenity. They want BLM and Antifa to burn down courthouses. And that is why they refuse to enforce certain laws. Now, at the man on the street, the average cop that you might meet level, they may be less politically overt than that. I suspect that for many of them, it's not so much a political position as it is mere cowardice. But I don't have a whole lot of expectation from police officers generally. I mean, never forget that the best cop you ever meet raised his hand to take an oath to the Constitution, and then instead of deploying to engage with and destroy the enemies of the United States of America, he chose to write parking tickets to law-abiding citizens. And that's the best you can hope for from a cop is he raised his hand, he swore to uphold and defend the Constitution, and then he chose not to. At best, they're men who can't take an oath seriously. So the fact that they're not enforcing laws like protecting children from acts of sodomy on public display. Okay, I'm going to have to go ahead and put a pin in this one and wrap it up because I've got stuff to do today, and more importantly, I am in danger of going further down this rabbit hole than I have time for. Thanks for watching this morning. I love you guys, and I promise I'm going to try to lighten this show up and get funny again. I don't know why, but I've just been a little extra heavy and grumpy about some stuff lately. Cade says, incorrect. Your experience with police is not everyone's. Oh, no, you're right. My experience with police is not universal. The inadequacy of the police and the utter ignorance of the law and their general incapability. Believe me, my man, the good cop is the exception, not the rule. Y'all be safe out there. I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow.